Hi, Melissa. It's so great to speak to you about your wonderful and powerful movie, Carmen. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me today.
Thank you.
Now, director Benjamin Millepied has set his version of the classic Carmen story in contemporary Mexico and California and completely reimagines the story, an unconventional, haunting romantic experience, if you will. What was his pitch to you about his vision that hooked you in?
I don't remember exactly if he pitched anything to me. I just knew that he was going to do a adaptation of Carmen, and Carmen is such an iconic character in literature, on the stage, in the opera, and I think everybody knows of Carmen, even if you're not familiar with the music of the opera, even if you've never seen it or if you've never read the novel. I think everybody knows who Carmen is and what she represents, this like fierce, feminine, sensual, powerful figure. So the opportunity to get to play her was obviously very appealing, but also knowing that Benjamin comes from the dance world and that he was going to tell the story through movement and dance, I just thought this is going to be something unlike anything else. And I always gravitate towards creatives that have a unique voice. I always say that he's kind of creating his own genre
Mm.
with this movie.
Yeah, well, you said that he has a unique voice. That's so apparent when you watch the film, and it's really stuck with me since I saw it the other week. And there are so many relevant and important topics told in such a way that only cinema can deliver, and in such a way as through dance, like you mentioned. I mean, it's talking about contemporary themes and issues around refugee crisis on the Mexican US border, the violence of drug cartels, mental health of US veterans. Like they're really big themes and topics to discuss. And dance can evoke more meaning than words sometimes. And I found myself so deeply moved by the storytelling through dance in this movie. And, Melissa, when researching, I didn't believe that you are not a trained dancer because I have eyes and I've seen you and loved you in the Heights. And I'm like, you are a dancer and you trained with the Sydney Dance Company, right, for rehearsals. And I can imagine that would have been a really intense experience preparing for the role. Was it a baptism of fire for you in some way?
It was. It was. I obviously having done the training for In the Heights really helped coming into Carmen, even though it's completely different style. It almost feels like a completely different world because salsa and like Latin rhythms use very specific like muscles and very specific movements of the body. And Benjamin's
Mm,
style is completely head to toe, very organic and flowing, and a mixture of ballet and contemporary. And I was petrified because I didn't know if I was going to be able to pull it off. I didn't know if I was going to be able to make the audience believe because Carmen is a natural born dancer.
mm,
She's not trained. She's trained by her mom and her grandmother probably, and her grandmother's mother. It's like a lineage of like female powerful dancers that just it comes naturally for them. So I was terrified of that feat of like being able to pull that off and just the wildness, the rawness of her movement
mm,
and setting up like a specific language for her because it's basically there's so little dialogue in the movie that Carmen's language is her dancing. That's the way that you can tell what's going on inside her. And and Benjamin did such a beautiful job. I mean, I respect dancers so much and I love dancers so much because a lot of like these dancers like Benjamin himself have been dancing since they were toddlers and
mm.
they put their body through so much. They live in like so much pain, but they do it because they love. They can't live without dancing. And that's like the mindset that I was going into with Carmen. But it's also a universal language. Like anybody that's watching a dance performance can understand the story. And there's no need for language or translation or anything. And I think
Yeah.
that's what you're talking about when you're saying that you were so moved by the
Mm,
movie, is because you're seeing a film where they're speaking Spanish half the time. It's a Australian French co-production. Like there was
yeah.
no one on set that spoke Spanish except for me and Rossy.
Right.
And Benjamin was just kind of like letting us do our thing in Spanish and trusting that we were conveying what we were supposed to be conveying in the scenes. and then really having to tell the story through eyes, through movement, through the chemistry between Aiden and Carmen and all of that. And so it's a very special movie. And if, like you, the audience is willing to kind of let themselves feel and let themselves go on this journey, it can be a very, very powerful experience. And all the little topics that you're talking about, like all the current issues of the world that get touched upon in the movie, I find that the best way to do it, and a big reason that I wanted to do this movie was precisely that, because it doesn't hit you over the head with it. You
Mm,
kind of see it happen. You're very aware that it's the current climate of the world that we're watching and that these characters are going through, and the trauma that they have because of like the violence, because of having come back from the war, and like all of these things that are so relevant, but it's not constantly talking about it, and it's not trying to teach you anything. It's kind of like putting it out there for you to digest, and then maybe come out and be like, oh my God, that is what's going on in the world.
mm.
But I saw it as like a ballet of sorts. And
Yes.
it sparks a conversation in a
Yeah.
different kind of way.